Imagine visiting Paris for like 48 hours. You sprint to the Eiffel Tower, you snap a quick photo.
Yeah, you grab a croissant from a corner bakery and just keep moving.
Just exactly. Maybe you walk past the Louvre and then boom, you were on a plane back home. I mean, you saw the sights, right? You bought the postcard.
But you definitely don't know the city.
Right. You don't know the back streets. You don't know the local baker by name. And you certainly don't speak the language. You are just a tourist.
A total tourist.
So now think about your career or your industry or even just your own daily professional development. For this deep dive, we are pulling from a really brilliant piece of source material by the business management firm Stellipop.
It's titled, Why Some Business Leaders Learn and Others Master Faster.
Yes, and their core argument is that the modern professional has accidentally become, well, an information tourist.
Which is such a great phrase.
It really is. I mean, we are constantly trying to absorb newsletters and trends and industry updates at this hyperspeed just to keep up. But we never actually settle down and build a house in any of these disciplines.
We're just visiting.
Right. So our mission today is to figure out how you, the listener, can escape that trap of information overload. We want to look at how to build a lasting, virtually untouchable competitive edge using some pretty ancient Japanese philosophies.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are currently operating in an economy where access to tools, to raw data, to basic operational playbooks, it's entirely universal.
Yeah, anyone with a Wi-Fi connection can look up the exact same marketing strategies that you can.
Precisely. Because that access is ubiquitous, noise is incredibly cheap. The barrier to entry for simply knowing something has basically fallen to zero.
Which is kind of terrifying if your whole value is just knowing things.
It is. But true excellence, true discipline, and the deep comprehension of how to execute those strategies flawlessly, that remains incredibly rare.
So it's not just about feeling less overwhelmed.
No, the stakes here are much higher. This is fundamentally about survival in a totally saturated market.
Okay, so the central tension that Stellipop zeroed in on is that the entire business world is structurally obsessed with speed.
Oh, absolutely.
We are just bombarded with the Silicon Valley mentality of, move fast and break things. Multitasking, fast scaling, quick wins. It is all celebrated.
It's what gets you on magazine covers.
Right. But the article points out that this hyperspeed approach usually just results in a very shallow foundation. It argues that simply reading a business book or, say, attending a weekend workshop is just learning.
And learning is merely the starting line.
Exactly. Mastery requires taking that information, living it, refining it, and eventually becoming it.
And the source states something really interesting here. The core difference between learning and mastering actually isn't about raw intelligence at all.
Wait, really? Then what is it?
It's about philosophy. Because while fads fade rapidly, mastery endures. When the market trends suddenly shift, which they always do, the masters can adapt without losing their structural integrity.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I have to push back on this premise a bit on behalf of you, the listener.
Go for it.
If the entire business ecosystem structurally rewards the fastest disruptor the person who gets their product to market first, or the one who capitalizes on a fleeting social media trend before anyone else, isn't slowing down a massive risk.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. Aren't you just going to get left behind by the competitor who sprinted past you while you were busy, perfecting your foundation?
The fear of being outpaced is visceral. It's very real. But the text explicitly counters this by looking at what actually sustains a business over a 10-year horizon, rather than just a 10-month horizon.
Okay.
Clients and markets might be temporarily distracted by a flashy new novelty, but what they fundamentally value, what they actually open their wallets for year after year, is reliability.
So consistency beats speed.
Consistency is the only currency that buys trust. The fastest disruptor might capture the initial headline, sure, and maybe a burst of early adopters.
But it doesn't last.
Exactly. If their foundation is shallow, they inevitably crumble under the weight of their own scaling. Their customer service breaks down, their product quality degrades, and they lose the market share they sprinted so hard to capture.
Yeah. The text points out that a true leader shouldn't just know the playbook to get by. They need to rewrite it, refine it, and crucially build a team that lives it daily without fail.
Which brings us right back to your tourist analogy. The disruptor is renting an Airbnb, trying to maximize the weekend.
Yeah.
The master is pouring a concrete foundation. You don't build client loyalty on a gimmick. You build it on the absolute certainty that your organization delivers excellence predictably.
You really cannot fake that kind of reliability.
No, you can't. It only comes from a deep, systematic understanding of your craft.
So if we agree that this deep residency, this mastery is the superior strategy, the immediate hurdle is execution. Like, how do you actually achieve that depth without halting your entire business operation?
Because you still have quotas to meet.
Exactly. You have deadlines to hit. The answer the source provides lies in the first of two Japanese concepts we're going to cover today. One that completely re-engineers how we view progress.
Right, Kaizen.
Yes, Kaizen.
It's a deeply influential philosophy, particularly in manufacturing, but Stellipop applies it beautifully to modern knowledge work.
The article breaks the word down for us. Kai, which means change, and Zen, which means good. So change for the better.
But the critical mechanism here is scale.
Right. Kaizen is absolutely not about massive revolutions. It is not about sweeping dramatic overhauls of your entire life or bringing in super expensive consultants to tear down your department.
It is entirely about tiny, consistent daily refinement.
They use the famous historical example of Toyota here. Toyota didn't achieve manufacturing dominance by locking a few executives in a boardroom to invent the perfect car factory on a whiteboard.
No, they decentralized the innovation.
Exactly. They empowered every single employee on the assembly line to identify small inefficiencies.
A misplaced tool, an awkward reach, a slight delay in the belt.
Yeah, and they were told to correct them right there on the spot. Over time, those thousands of tiny adjustments created a massive, almost insurmountable competitive advantage.
So the daily question for leaders under this philosophy shrinks down to something incredibly manageable. It's just, what can we make 1% better today?
I love that. And I look at this concept like compound interest, but applied to a business process instead of a bank account.
What's fascinating here is, well, the phrase the source uses to describe this psychological shift, they call it perfection found in progress.
That's a huge paradigm shift.
It really is, for modern management especially. It shifts the paralyzing burden of massive innovation completely off the leader's shoulders.
Because most leaders operate under this delusion that they have to come down from the mountain with a brilliant, finalized strategy that's going to revolutionize the industry overnight.
And that expectation is exhausting. Right. It creates bottlenecks, and honestly, it usually fails upon contact with reality.
Right.
Kaizen distributes that burden of innovation across the entire team as a series of micro-adjustments. It democratizes improvement.
So the employee on the front lines, the one actually answering the customer support calls, they are the one best positioned to realize that moving a specific button on the software interface will save, like, 3 seconds per call.
Exactly. And going back to your compound interest idea, if you put money in a compound interest account, a 1% daily improvement doesn't look like much on a Tuesday.
You literally can't even perceive the difference. A competitor looking at you on Wednesday would think you were completely stagnant.
But you let that 1% daily refinement run for a few years, compounding on itself, and by year 5, you are an untouchable giant.
And your competitors can't figure out how you achieved your market dominance. They will study your company looking for the one big secret you discovered or the massive exit you made.
But they won't find it.
No. Because the secret was 10,000 invisible, 1% improvements that they simply do not have the patience or the operational discipline to replicate.
It's an incredibly powerful competitive moat.
It is. But having a daily system for improvement, this Kaizen engine, is incredibly powerful in theory. But human nature introduces a major friction point here.
Oh, yes.
If your team is miserable or burnt out, or if they just view their jobs as a strict punch-in, punch-out transaction to pay the bills, that Kaizen system is going to flatline.
Because you cannot mandate curiosity.
Exactly. You can't force people to actively look for 1% improvements if they simply do not care about the work they are doing.
A method without a motive is useless.
Right. We need the right mindset to actually power the engine. And that is where the second Japanese concept from the Stellipop material comes in, shokunin.
Shokunin is really the philosophical heartbeat that makes Kaizen possible.
The article notes that shokunin loosely translates to craftsman, but it warns that using that translation in a Western context really undersells the depth of the word.
It completely removes the spiritual element of the practice.
Yeah. Shokunin means honoring the work itself. It means that every nail hammered into a board, every brushstroke painted on a canvas, or every cup of tea poured for a guest, it becomes an act of devotion.
The job itself becomes a mirror of the worker's soul.
The ultimate goal here is for a team to approach every single deliverable with this profound sense of quiet pride. They aren't just trying to get the task off their desk to meet a deadline.
They are actively trying to perfect it. And that level of devotion is what creates true corporate culture and identity.
But this raises an important question, I think, about how we view modern work culture.
Oh, definitely. In the modern corporate environment, we almost exclusively treat work as a means to an end. We work to hit the quarterly metric, to get the bonus, to satisfy the shareholder.
Yeah.
Shokunin demands that the work is the end. The quality of the output reflects the character and the integrity of the person producing it, regardless of external rewards.
I have to stop you there and play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because translating a samurai sword-making philosophy to a modern office environment feels like a massive leap to me.
It does sound a bit romantic, doesn't it?
It does. It's very easy to see how painting a beautiful masterpiece or forging a blade reflects your soul. That is art. But how on earth does you, our listener, driving to work right now, apply the Shokunin mindset to something mind-numbingly mundane?
Like what?
Like compiling a Q3 expense spreadsheet or writing a routine follow-up email to a vendor. How is that a mirror of your soul?
It is the most vital question a professional can ask, honestly. And it's where most people dismiss the philosophy entirely.
Because it feels disconnected from reality.
Exactly. But the source material addresses this disconnect by focusing intensely on the phrase, respecting the process. The Shokunin mindset is absolutely not about the glamour or the prestige of the final output.
So it's not about what you're making.
No, it is entirely about the internal standard of the worker.
The internal baseline.
Precisely. If you are drafting a routine follow-up email or compiling that Q3 expense spreadsheet, the Shokunin mindset dictates a silent internal monologue.
Which is what?
It's saying, I'm going to format this data so perfectly, I'm going to check the formulas so thoroughly, and I am going to present this information so clearly that the next person who opens this file has an absolutely seamless experience.
Oh, wow.
It is an act of deep respect for the recipient, respect for the organization's time, and most importantly, respect for yourself. You refuse to attach your name to mediocrity.
I love that. When great stops being a subjective, occasional goal reserved for big client pitches and becomes the non-negotiable baseline standard for every single micro action, the company completely transcends delivering a basic service.
You begin crafting an experience.
So the spreadsheet isn't just rows of data anymore. It becomes a physical manifestation of your commitment to clarity, your meticulous attention to detail, and your empathy for your colleagues' workflow.
Yes, exactly.
You take pride in it not because a spreadsheet is inherently beautiful, but because doing things well is simply who you are. It becomes an identity trait rather than a task.
And when an entire team operates with that quiet pride, that internal baseline standard of excellence, the culture becomes unbreakable.
They stop needing a manager to constantly check their work for errors.
Right, because their own internal standard is far stricter than any external metric the manager could enforce.
This moves us from the realm of abstract philosophy into the territory of Tuesday morning execution.
Ooh.
Because admiring the soulful devotion of a craftsman is wonderful, but implementing it into a modern business structure requires a roadmap.
You need practical steps.
Right. How can the listener actually inject Kaizen and Shokunin into their team tomorrow without needing to light incense or buy a calligraphy set for the conference room?
The Stellipop article provides a very clear, structural 5-step framework for implementation. And crucially, it details the measurable return on investment.
Let's walk through these 5 pillars of building mastery. Step 1 is make improvement a daily ritual. This is the physical manifestation of Kaizen. But how does a manager actually do this without it feeling like just another annoying corporate mandate?
It requires integrating the question into existing communication loops. Instead of adding a tedious new hour-long meeting, you inject the Kaizen prompt into the daily stand-up, or even just the team Slack channel.
Like, what do you ask?
You simply ask, what is one small friction point we can eliminate today? By making it a daily ritual, you give your team permission to look for flaws.
Which is huge because in many corporate cultures, pointing out a flaw is seen as complaining.
Exactly. Kaizen reframes it as contributing.
Step 2 is teach the art of refinement. The text notes a fascinating concept here. Mastery is actually about editing.
Yes, it is about celebrating the iteration, not just the flashy initial idea.
In practice, this means shifting the spotlight. We often praise the person who brainstorms the wild new marketing concept, right? But we ignore the person who spent 3 weeks refining the copy, testing the links, and ensuring the delivery was flawless,
Teaching refinement means elevating the editors and the polishers.
which flows directly into step 3. Slow down to speed up. The core idea here is that acquiring a deep understanding of a problem right now prevents catastrophic rework later.
Because rushing through the planning phase to give the illusion of speed almost always guarantees that the project will have to be torn down and rebuilt.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because in discussing this third step, the source uses the phrase, patience is profit.
Such a great line.
In a business world where time is quite literally money and where investors are screaming for quarterly returns, can you elaborate on the mechanics of why celebrating beautiful work over fast work actually saves a company money in the long run?
The savings become apparent when you calculate the hidden corrosive costs of that move fast and break things mentality. When you rush a product to market, you invariably break things, fixing broken things. Whether that involves patching a buggy piece of software, issuing refunds for a poorly executed service, or attempting to repair a fractured relationship with a high-value client. It is astronomically expensive.
Not just in dollars either.
No. It drains financial resources, it destroys team morale, and it permanently damages brand reputation.
So the cost of the rework is always higher than the cost of doing it right the first time.
Exponentially higher. Deep understanding now prevents rework later. That is the literal definition of patience being profit.
Makes total sense.
If you take the extra time to employ the shokunin mindset, to perfect the process, ensure the foundation is solid before you scale, you eliminate the downstream chaos.
The Stellipop philosophy emphasizes that true progress is deliberate and, importantly, never actually done.
Right. It is a constant, steady hum of improvement, rather than a frantic, exhausting series of sprints followed by inevitable crashes.
That sets up step 4 perfectly. Reward craft, not just output. If patience is profit, management has to incentivize the patience.
Exactly. If you only give bonuses based on raw sales volume or lines of code written, you are actively encouraging your team to abandon quality for speed.
Rewarding craft means you have to actively spot and spotlight the perfectionist on your team. You have to publicly celebrate the employee who caught a critical error in a contract before it went out.
Or the designer who fine-tuned the user interface until it was completely frictionless. You have to put a premium on beautiful work.
And finally, step 5 is the linchpin. Model it as a leader. Mastery has to begin at the top.
It absolutely does. If a leader preaches Kaizen and Shokunin to their team, but then rushes through their own presentations, ignores details, and refuses to accept feedback, the entire philosophy is exposed as hypocritical corporate jargon.
A leader has to publicly refine their own playbook. They have to stand in front of the team and say, I analyzed how I ran that last client meeting, and I realized I talked too much and didn't listen enough. Here is my 1% improvement for today.
And by admitting where they can improve, they create a psychological safety for the rest of the team to do the exact same thing.
The text is adamant that executing these 5 steps is not a soft, feel-good exercise in employee wellness. It produces a highly measurable return on investment.
Yes. First, you achieve operational excellence, which physically translates to lower error rates and reduced waste.
Second, you unlock massive employee engagement. Because contrary to popular belief, ping pong tables don't drive engagement. Pride in the work drives engagement.
Exactly. And third, you secure intense client loyalty, because customers are acutely aware of when a brand cares about the details.
So what does this all mean? Let's trace the journey we've navigated today.
There's been a lot.
It has. We started by identifying the modern crap, the deafening noise of the economy, the relentless obsession with speed, and the shallow, unfulfilling nature of information tourism.
Right.
We then explored the antidote, applying the 1% daily micro-improvements of Kaizen to build an untouchable foundation.
And we realized that to actually fuel that system, we have to adopt the Shokunin mindset.
Infusing our work, even the most mundane daily tasks, with the quiet pride and soulful devotion of a true craftsman.
We learned that to implement this, leaders must turn improvement into a daily ritual, reward the craft of editing, and publicly model their own vulnerability and desire to improve.
If there is one overarching thesis to internalize from the Stellipop analysis, it is a complete inversion of how we view the future of business.
The future will not belong to the fastest learners, or the loudest disruptors, or the most frantic multitaskers.
No.
It will belong to the quiet masters, the individuals and the organizations who possess the rare discipline to slow down, to respect the process, and to refine their craft day after day, year after year.
Until excellence is no longer an effort, but simply their natural state of being.
Exactly.
The future belongs to the quiet masters. It is a powerful lens through which to view your own daily grind. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with something to ponder on your own.
The final thought.
Think about the traditional Japanese tea ceremony. A master might spend 30 years perfecting a single, seemingly simple motion, the exact angle of the pour, the precise temperature of the water, the specific fold of the napkin.
30 years of devotion to a mundane action until it becomes transcendent.
So look critically at your own workday. What is the one fundamental, everyday task you perform? Maybe it's leading your morning huddle, maybe it's writing a project brief, or maybe it's simply how you actively listen to a client on a phone call that you've been rushing through.
What's your tea ceremony?
Exactly. What is the one task you could stop treating as a chore and instead spend the next year perfecting into an absolute art form?